All right. Hello and good morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you're listening from. Welcome to the Future Bites Future Green podcast, where sustainability meets real world action. And I'm Heidi, the founder of Future Green, and I'm thrilled you're here. So today we welcome a dear friend and a longtime supporter of Future Green, Dana Winograd. She's Executive Director of Plastic Free Seas. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Heidi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Let me tell people a little bit about you before we dive in. So Dana, you've spent over a decade, pretty long time, fighting plastic pollution in Hong Kong. And you do this through educational talks, community engagement, lots and lots of hands-on action, which is fantastic. And your work with Plastic Free Seas has really empowered thousands of students and volunteers, and plenty of wider organizations, even including the business sector, to understand the plastic problem and help them to be part of the solution. And I recall you do a lot of beach cleanups, school programs, you do advocacy work with the bigger corporates. And, you know, from our perspective, we really see you as a big driving force behind one of Hong Kong's most respected environmental education charities. So in this Future Bites conversation, we're going to explore your journey because we want to know about you, first and foremost, and the impact that you're having with your charity. In the way you're transforming communities. So yeah, let's jump in and just start with, who are you, Dana? And, you know, just a little bit about you and your background and what brought you to where you are today in environmental education.
Okay, well, I didn't start out in environmental education, that's for sure. I've been in Hong Kong for 30 years. And I came here first as a hotel inspector, which I did for a while. And then I got involved in a green group, a community green group in Discovery Bay where I live. I was one of the founding members of a group. And we started looking at the issue of plastic waste washing up on our beaches. And we did that that was back in 2007. So Plastic Free Seas started with two of us, Tracy and myself, from this green group. And we realized that there just needs to be far more education and awareness in Hong Kong. That's why we started our charity.
That's quite a while ago. I know you're both still active today.
So Tracy left Hong Kong about 6 or 8 years ago. I've lost count. And but she stayed involved and she's now on the board.
Okay, wonderful. Just to understand a little bit about the organization. And so let's just get down to details, because not everyone really understands the challenge and the scale of the issue we're facing. Whenever I talk to businesses, they believe recycling is just the best thing. And we always say, it's not a bad thing, but did you know only 10% of plastic is recycled? And so it's really important to help businesses or everyday people understand that recycling isn't necessarily the best solution, but understanding there are other better ways to sort of resolve this issue of all this plastic pollution in our seas and really infiltrating also nowadays into our health. So tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, what is the scale of the problem?
Well, the problem, it depends on how you want to look at it, but the problem's huge whichever way you look at it. But if you go to the beaches, you see it's very evident, all the plastic that's washing in. If you're even on the streets, you see it. If you look at the information from the government, for example, the breakdown of what's in our landfill, you know, it's 20% is plastic. You can just walk down the street any morning and you can see the people walking down the street with bags of plastic food containers and food cups and drink cups. So, you know, any way you look at it, we can see that there's definitely a problem with plastic, the use of too much plastic. And unfortunately, people do tend to think, well, it's okay as long as I recycle it. That said, not enough people are recycling, but it is what some people think. So what we definitely get across is the fact that, you know, just because you put something into a recycling bin doesn't mean it's necessarily going to get recycled. There are a lot of factors that are involved there. You know, is that a material that's easy to recycle? Is it recycled in the location that you're at? Is it wanted by the recyclers? Are there people wanting to buy that recycled material? So you shouldn't use something thinking that you're going to necessarily it's going to be recycled. That's first and foremost. And we always stress the 3 R's, whether it's three-year-olds that we're working with, secondary school students, or adults. It's the fact that reduce is most important. We definitely have to recycle whatever it is that we're using, if it's possible to recycle it. But first and foremost, we have to be using less plastic. That's the only way we're going to solve this problem.
Yeah, and so keep going with the 3 R's, because you said reduce. What's the second one? So just make sure we're covering everyone.
Well, for those main 3 R's, it's so funny now because the kids in the schools, they know about 10 R's now. But the main ones, of course, are reduce, reuse, recycle. So if you can't reduce it, make sure you reuse it as much and as long as you can, and then only then do you then recycle it. But there's so many R's, repair, refuse, just so many things that you can do to help solve this problem beyond those traditional 3 R's. But it's still so sad to me when I ask people, what is the first R? And they all say recycle, because we've been, it's been banged into us now that we have to recycle. And so people forget that actually it's the lowest one on the hierarchy of how to manage our waste.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm glad you talk about the reduce and reuse, because there are solutions these days. I mean, we have to be realistic. Whatever we're using to carry our drinks and our food, it needs to be easy. We need to reduce those barriers. We can't make it an inconvenience, right? In sustainability, we talk about leveling the playing field. If the options are that the sustainable option is not more expensive, it's easy to access, and reducing those barriers and embedded into daily life, and then maybe there's more of a chance that people will change their habits. And so tell us a little bit more how you go about talking about reuse for, let's say, I presume it's drinks that you focus on. Is it bottled water?
It's bottled water first and foremost. It's bottled water. You don't need to buy bottled water in Hong Kong. You can actually drink from the tap, but if you want to, you feel more comfortable, you like the taste better, definitely filter it. And it's as simple as getting a Brita filter or another brand filter on your counter, or getting one that attaches to your tap. It's very easy to filter your water. So that stops you from having to buy the bottled water. So, you're reducing. And you're also reusing because you have your reusable water bottle. But it's not just for beverages. It's your coffee cups, which are generally lined with plastic, that we're trying to avoid. So bringing your own refillable coffee cup if you're getting takeaway. Choosing is really important. People forget we do have choices. And we can choose a coffee shop that can serve us in a reusable cup. And we are also very lucky to have a number of coffee shops that can even give us a reusable cup to go through borrow systems. So we do have a lot of options, but it doesn't stop at drinks. It's also our food containers. So it's how we bring our lunch. How, are we using Ziploc bags that we're going to throw away? Are we using saran wrap, or are we using reusable containers? How do we go and get a takeaway? Can we bring a reusable container for our takeaway? So there's lots of things that we can reuse. Refill is another R word, which is aligned very closely with reuse, where we can bring our own containers, say, to the grocery store and refill a container with either dried goods or liquids. There are more and more shops that allow us to do this. So there are lots of opportunities around.
Yeah.
And of course, Hong Kong is amazing because we have wet markets. When I go to other countries in the summer or on holiday, I don't have a wet market. I have to buy most of my groceries, my fruit and vegetables from the grocery store packaged. Whereas here, we're so lucky. We have so many wet markets where we can just bring our own bags. And
can you explain what a wet market is for those who don't know?
Our wet markets are like mini fruit and vegetable produce stalls that we have, whether they are indoors in Hong Kong. They could be set up indoors, so that's all year round. They could be even on the street. Many of them are on the street in Hong Kong, and you can get everything. And the majority of the stuff is package free.
Yeah, that's the great part about it, package free. So they're essentially like markets, but in the West you might have like street markets, but there's no packaging. Usually there's no packaging on them. And what I also like about them is that they are a smallholder businesses, right? They're just usually a mom and pop, and so you're kind of spreading the love in terms of where you're using your dollars. And they also sell meat and fish as well, and I think that's where the term wet came from, because of washing down all of the the stalls. At the end of the day, it was always wet on the ground. But they're a really great way to interact with the community as well, I think.
I love it. We're regulars at our wet markets, one near work and one near home. So
yeah, a really good way to stay connected with those that are working around you. So going back to the point of reuse and sort of embedding it into daily life, that you're right, there are a lot of options now, and in particular in some of the malls in Hong Kong, you can actually use services like Muse, the reuse systems. And did you know that they were actually free to use? This is, people don't know that they're free. Because it's the vendor that pays for that service, which I think is fantastic. Have you been able to, what's your approach? Let's say you're going into a big office block and you're trying to do, I don't know, a lunch and learn. But what's worked for you in terms of getting people to change their habits?
So I always have a look in their canteen, make sure that they have filtered water available, like their canteen, their staff quarters for their meals, whatever it is, a kitchen, a canteen. Make sure that, first of all, they offer water and that people are comfortable with it. And that's quite common now, but even going back 5 years, it might not have been so common. We also make sure that they have recycling available for the staff if they do have bottles or food containers, whatever, that they can wash, that they can dispose of them properly in a recycling facility. Now, that's a bit troublesome in some buildings because some buildings don't have recycling. So some companies, I encourage them to use the services that are available in Hong Kong. There are a number of companies that will come to your office and collect your recycling, give you the data. It's great for ESG. It's great for your sustainability reports. You get the metrics. So there's lots of options. But the one thing I do encourage them to do is for the staff to bring their own containers, but I also encourage, say, a company to leave some reusable coffee cups and food containers at their reception desk or somewhere near there, so that staff on their way out can just grab a container.
Yeah, you've got to make it easy, haven't you? And perhaps that could be a good Christmas gift coming up. I don't know.
Yes.
With these kind of reusable containers, because it really is about changing habits, making sure that, because we see hundreds, when you think about the term anxiety, climate anxiety, it really comes to mind when you see the lunchtime workers go out in the droves and come back with their single-use plastic noodle soup bag, and it's just an eyesore. But imagine if on your way out at lunchtime at 12 o'clock, stacked there were reusable containers, even branded by the companies, these big banks and these big corporate offices that are around, especially in places like Admiralty where there are lots of businesses. I think that could be an easy switch, couldn't it? Getting the CSR teams to support something like that, because ultimately it has to be easy. And I have to stress that if you're going to run a sustainability program, you have to make it incredibly easy and just drop those barriers to get started.
Yeah, there is one barrier though to that. The company can have the containers for their staff, but often it's the restaurant that won't accept them. So what I have seen done quite successfully in the past on just a few occasions is where that a team has gone out to the restaurants in the neighborhood and found out which ones are accepting the food containers and let the staff know. And some have even made a deal where if somebody comes in with X branded, food container, that they get $5 off their lunch. So when some effort is put into it to make sure that people know where to go, because the first thing I hear when I say this in my lunch and learn about bringing your own container is, the restaurants won't accept it. So if somebody can do a bit of legwork in your area, in their area, and find out which ones do, then that would be great. The government does have a website that lists a number of restaurants that will accept the food containers. It's not exhaustive though. So, that is a great way for a CSR team or whoever's working on sustainability and trying to push for change in an office that's a great action for them to do.
And this makes me sort of think about the landlords that we work with, imagine if you had that stipulated in your green lease. You're renting a retail space, and in your lease you agree to have this option where you can have all kinds of disclaimers about cleanliness or whatever you need to do, but the idea is that we will accept reusable containers, and that actually ultimately will save the business money because they're not having to purchase single-use plastic containers.
Yes. Yeah, but the people have to accept, though, that they may not be able to call up and order their noodle soup and have it ready for them if they actually want to reduce waste. Yes. They may have to go there and bring their container. And this is a whole mindset change, because in reality, what people do, and it's made so easy for them now with all the food apps, that they order ahead of time and go and pick it up, either pick it up or get it delivered. So that goes back to choice, an individual's choice. Do I want to go the extra step to try and, reduce the amount of waste I'm creating? It's not always the easiest.
Hey, sorry for the interruption, but just in case you don't know who we are, I want to welcome you to the Future Green, Future Bites podcast. I'm Heidi, and this is where sustainability meets real-world action in food. I'm the founder of Future Green, and I'm thrilled you're here. Before we dive into today's guest interview, I wanted to share more about what we do. We're not just consultants, we're change makers, and we partner with communities, local suppliers, and underrepresented groups to co-create tangible solutions in food service sustainability. Whether it's designing strategy sprints, so that's our flagship workshops, or auditing supply chains, training teams with actionable tools, our mission is rooted in inclusion, impact, and transformation. And so in this series of Future Bites, we bring those stories to life. We are sitting down with inspiring leaders from our community, like our past meetup speakers or local chefs, sustainability trainers, and social innovators, to unpack their journeys, their challenges, and ideas for a greener food future. So whether you're looking to source seasonally, reduce food waste, or just bring more equity into the supply chain through reimagining menus for climate, each episode promises hope, insight, and practical step forward. So before we dig into today's conversation further, please explore how Future Green can help you and partner with you in the food service industry so that we can bring sustainability from concept to kitchen. Now let's get back to our guest interview.
Well, you touched on my ecosystem question a little bit about, government and choices and rules, regulations. So in your opinion, beyond sort of individual action, what can we do for systemic change? How can we get things moving along in terms of policy? What do we need to do? Who do we need to talk to make the biggest difference?
Well, this is challenging because we need the government to do something, and the government has done something, and they've done their single-use plastic ban in 2024, where they banned polystyrene lunch containers and cups, which was amazing, and they banned plastic cutlery and straws. They banned plastic containers and cups for dine-in, and on phase 2, they're supposed to ban it for takeaway and delivery. Now, that's great. That's fantastic to reduce plastic, but we want to reduce overall waste. We don't want to just be reducing plastic. And unfortunately, these policies are just focused on reducing plastic. So what's happening is the companies are switching over to paper and other non-plastic
But it
materials.
doesn't address the root cause of more waste in the system.
Exactly. And although theoretically some of most of the fiber food containers are theoretically recyclable and they can be recycled, a lot of the systems aren't accepting them still. Green Act communities aren't necessarily accepting them. So we still have a long way to go. So what would be preferable is if the government made some sort of an incentive to companies to choose the reusable system. So we need to, I don't think they can't mandate. I think we're far from that at the moment, but if they could give tax incentives or some form of an incentive to companies who are not creating waste through single use and are choosing to go the route of reusables, because it's not easy. There needs to be a little bit of help to
transition
get them
plan.
Yeah. So that would be my biggest wish, is if the government could implement something that would, make it a good option for these companies to be choosing reusable programs like the one you mentioned, Muse, and there's another one, Tap Away, and there's Recube. There are a number of companies that are trying, but they need companies to be wanting to use them.
Yeah, you're totally right. The incentives need to be there, not just for the individuals, but for the businesses. And unfortunately, we did hear was it a few months ago in September, that the government will be postponing the waste charge, for, that we had spent so many years pulling together as organizations to charge people for waste. Tell us more about that. How is that going?
Oh, that's not going well, unfortunately. And, that would have been key. You would have definitely seen companies being much more open to reusable food containers, and also, offices, they wouldn't have wanted people coming back with food containers because that's increasing their waste. So there would have been more of a push from an office point of view to get their staff to stop bringing in single-use waste. So and for individual behavior as well at home, packaging waste from the grocery store, and, you would have seen so many more people going to the wet market. You would have seen grocery stores cutting back on their waste because customers wouldn't be buying the stuff that was triple packaged anymore. Yeah. So it would have really made the biggest difference had they gone through with it. But unfortunately, they haven't. And I don't see much positive discussion about it happening anytime soon, but I'm not ready to accept
Can't
that.
Give up. Yeah.
No, I'm not giving up.
2 steps forward and 1 step back, but it's a very slow, gradual, because we were working in the height of all the changes and proposals. We were working with businesses, and I did see, especially some of the bigger chains, they did start to change the way they procured their containers, like the lids at one of the quite well-known coffee chains. They switched out their packaging for the coffee cups. The lids were sort of hardened paper, but so that it could be, if it were to go to landfill, it could easily decompose. But I do hear a lot of challenges around how the consumer is accepting it, because for I think they had cookies, they used to be in a brown paper bag with a slight clear film, so you could see through, and that increased sales because people are hungry, they're choosing through their hunger, through their eyes. But when they switched to completely brown paper and removed that plastic film, sales went down. So there are all of these business challenges. So are you seeing that as well? And how can businesses really overcome this? I suppose one way is the level playing field. If everybody's doing it, we can't complain.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's that we need that level playing field. We can't expect one company to be put at a disadvantage because they're doing the right thing, while the others continue to do the less right thing, and benefit. So that's why we need the change. And the coffee cup lid is a great example. That was a result of the single-use plastic ban. Like if somebody was to sit in a coffee shop with a single-use cup, which they shouldn't be doing anyway, but if they were to, because so many do, that's all that some shops offer, it had to be the paper.
Yeah.
So fiber.
And
that's a great example.
Yeah, this leads me on to another point about training staff. I remember I was at a well-known coffee chain store in Cyberport, and they had put the plastic single-use container on one side and then the porcelain cup on the other. And staff, all they had to do was say this or this. And so training your staff is critical, isn't it, to get them to move towards the more sustainable option. So it's still positioned as options and choices for the consumer, for the customer, but they had an option suddenly. Even that I thought was a great move, because those who naturally were inclined to avoid single-use plastic could just say, yes, I'll have the porcelain cup.
And they see it themselves. Even if they're not offered it by the staff, they see it themselves, so they can make that choice, which is really important. Yeah, we see a lot of challenge with making changes with the staff who are not so open to change. So oftentimes, if they serve more cups, that means they have to wash more cups.
Yeah, the perception that it's more work for them. So we need to take away that perception.
Yeah, they need, and it just needs, business owners just have to be conscious of the fact that oftentimes this is not great for the staff. It does cause them more work or more inconvenience. So they have to work around that, and they have to, really bring the staff into understanding why this is so great when they do this.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen it a lot with the reusable cup program. We did a trial for reusable coffee cups with a coffee shop, and the staff after a while weren't offering it because it was more work for them, and there was really no incentive necessarily for them to do it. But when I was there and I was chatting up the people in the line and telling them about it, and making them aware, first of all, they were all for it. But if the staff aren't going to push these things, then it's really not going to happen.
You have to train your staff, and you have to make it less of an inconvenience even to your staff. That is so critical. We talk about motivation all the time. What motivates you, in that sort of behavioral science space? What motivates people to do the right thing? And having those incentives there, so critical for behavior change. It works, but you really have to plan it and make sure that you've taken into consideration your employees' time, effort, energy, all of that. I remember when we worked with a private club in Hong Kong, the kitchen staff were not keen on upcycling food and separating food into the right bins. One day they got an orca in, this kind of machine that turns compostable sort of food waste into liquid. So it was good because it got rid of physical waste, but they didn't want to train until they realized the benefit to them personally was that they didn't have to carry big bags of rubbish up the stairs to take it out to the bins. And so it's just about really understanding and empathizing, isn't it, with your employees and how this change will really affect them.
Definitely. And that's a great example of a win-win there, really.
Yeah, I really love it. So, and then from the plastic-free sea side, I know you're doing a lot of things with schools and corporates, but if you had to just say three things that matter the most for change, for whether it's from the government perspective or individual perspective, what are the three things you would like to see happen for those who are listening, for us to have the biggest impact? What are the top three things in your mind?
Well, I'm going to narrow that down a bit to schools because it's hard to say across the board. So, for example, in schools, if there was government legislation that that you couldn't have single-use food containers for lunches in schools, that's huge. There's 700 or something secondary schools alone, or I can't remember if that's primary and secondary. There's a huge number. And if we were able to reduce that waste, that not only reduces waste, but it also sends a message to the students. It's educational for them as well, knowing that I can receive a meal and it doesn't have to be in a single-use container. I can have a reusable. So I think that would be really quite key.
So going after sort of where the government is already procuring. So,
they may or may not be
like schools.
They actually leave it to the schools. They leave it to the schools. So the government would have to just say to the schools that are run, definitely the ones that are run under the EDB, that you no longer can create that waste from single use. We're switching to and they have done things in the past. They've made washing facilities available. They've had money for schools to open washing facilities so that they could do that. So they've done some things, but I think if they could just across the board get rid of that waste, it would do so much. And
you think it'd be pretty straightforward because the conditions are there. It's a canteen setting. It's repeatable, right? To have these reusable containers.
A lot of them come in from outside. So a lot of them are not cooked in the school. They're brought in. So, and maybe either reheated, the meals are brought in. Yeah. So they have to reheat them, or they just bring them in and they're hot and they deliver them. So it's not, so there is a logistical thing where they have to drop them off and pick them back up, but it happens in some schools. It's already happening. I've seen it in local schools.
So it's about putting a spotlight on the ones that are doing the right thing and sort of encouraging it, maybe through fear of missing out.
Yeah. And I think something, bottled water. Bottled water really just needs to be addressed and it could be addressed in so many different ways. Because, if we were in a country where you couldn't trust the water, that's a different story. But we are in a place where generally, aside from emergencies, we can trust the water and we have access to being able to filter our water. So I think a lot could be done. For example, not allowing, well, first of all, I'd like to ban vending machines in all schools. It's far too easy for people to swipe their octopus and just grab a drink, which is generally either, well, it's water unnecessary or it's sugary. So, that seems to make sense to me. But
do you think people don't know that in Hong Kong the water is safe to drink from the tap? Do you think there's a misconceptions around that? Because that seems to be a no-brainer. If the water is clean, I mean, the taste is a different thing. You might have to filter it, but the water coming out is safe.
Yes, and it is a misconception. It's something that not even with local people who've lived here all their lives, it's something that they've just done. But for a lot of them, they'll just boil it. But the idea of taking, water right from the tap just doesn't sit well with them. So it's not always easy to boil it. So let's just buy bottled water. But a lot of new people coming to Hong Kong are unsure, and and then they hear from other people.
Would the solution to that be just keeping with schools to put in filtration sort of stations, water stations, right? Which should be fairly straightforward, that are fixed to the tap. Yeah.
Yep, they have those. So every school I go to that has good water refill stations and has enough, we make sure, we check on that and we let them know and we ask the students, do you like the water? And then the hard thing is, if I say don't sell bottled water, I'm worried that will drive kids to buy sugary drinks. So there's a little bit of a fine line there. But I think, yes, that is one thing we've been focusing on for years with schools, is making sure that they have refillable water water refill systems. And we actually had a school last summer who got new water refill stations after our talk. They actually did. And they wrote to us and they said, look, this is what we've done. So it is working. Yeah. But even to things like, should bottled water be advertised?
Yeah, I absolutely, this really brings up another point, because I work with businesses so closely. I did speak to a CEO of a what they call FMCGs. They produce food and drinks for supermarkets, and he told me that it was one of their biggest profit lines. Yes. So how do you sort of reconcile that? A business is surviving because of the unsustainable option. It's very, very hard, isn't it? Of course, diversification is really important. That reminds me of the Baloo model, where they they diversify their options from having single-use drinks and bottles. That was glass bottles, but expanded to filtration taps. So, yeah, I find that quite challenging for the businesses. But I think for schools, it's a no-brainer. You can't complain about reducing your waste from water on a campus where the conditions are predictable and every day you're coming in and leaving at the same time, eating at the same time. So you said food packaging in schools, and you've said refillable water systems. What's the third one? If you have
the third one in schools is recycling, and it's interesting because there have been a lot of government initiatives to get the recycling bins into the schools, but it's all very ad hoc. And who's going to collect it? Why? It shouldn't be a choice. If the government wants families to be recycling at home, you need to have them learning about recycling in school. It's a no-brainer. So we need to be modeling, the behaviors that we want. We can model them in schools and teach them how to do it right, and then they'll take that home with them. So I think there could be a much better effort to make sure that there is recycling in every school. Every school has to do it. It should just be mandated. Yeah. And proper collectors coming to collect it, whether that's through the Green Act community or through whoever, but recyclers who are trusted, and that would just have such a great knock-on effect for what happens at home. But right now, recycling bins are either non-existent or they're hidden or they're misused, and it's just not focus in a school.
Really speaks to the point, doesn't it, about the barriers of doing the right thing if you don't have your infrastructure set up correctly, because you want to make it a no-brainer, like you don't have to think, it's just something that you do as part of your everyday routine. In terms of doing the right thing. Actually, I was talking to another school recently because they're building another campus, and we were talking about the idea of building in sustainability when you build new buildings, kitchens, rather than sort of trying to retrofit after. Okay, so just wrapping up, Dana, what's going to be coming up for you in 2026? Are there any fun campaigns that we can look forward to?
Well, we're just kicking off a new workshop. So we have our talks in schools. We've always had this microbead workshop, but microbeads are pretty much, you can't find them in body care products, scrubs very often in Hong Kong anymore because there's a voluntary ban. So we've been looking for a new hands-on workshop, and we've got a microplastic workshop, which is really quite fun. And we hope it's going to really be able to engage people and just really so they can see what is washing up on our beaches and how that relates to what we use on a daily basis. And it's just going to engage them in a way that will hopefully help change behavior.
Amazing. I look forward to hearing about that. So thank you today for coming on, Dana. This has been brilliant, just hearing more about your work. I can't believe it's been so many years, but the impact that you've had, I'm sure, is huge. I'd love to see a bit more about the different businesses and schools that you've worked with, because sometimes we just have to stop and recognize the work we're doing, and just give ourselves a pat on the back. I mean, I think 10 years plus is incredible. So well done, and keep going, I would say.
No, thank you. And you too.
Thanks,
keep sharing.
Dana. Thanks. You. Bye.